Yeah, that's correct, Paul. We are back as a group now. So now it is time to transition to our wonderful panel discussion led by Paul from Silver Peak. So, Paul, the floor is all yours.
Perfect. Thank you much. Thank you very much, Steve, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and for joining this virtual session. I think we've got the makings for an interesting discussion, especially with what is going on right now in the world, and we will try to weave some of that in. But I do want to make sure we address some of the questions and the original agenda related to digital transformation and the network as an enabler. When I think about digital, I think about the new business models coming out. I'm thinking about AI, IoT, blockchain, cloud, multi-cloud strategies. And one thing that really can't be overlooked is the importance of a next generation network and the WAN to enable that transformation, to enable the adoption of these new technologies. So what I'd like to do is turn it over to I think it's two panelists we have with us today, Vishal and Alex, and allow them to introduce themselves. As for myself, again, I've been with Silver Peak about a year and a half now. I lead our value management team, and what I do is work with prospects and customers to understand what is the business value, be it operational, strategic, or financial, of investing in SD-WAN, and also work with them to understand the value realized post-implementation. So why don't, Vishal, I'll turn it over to yourself to introduce yourself. And one note for everyone, please ask any questions along the way in the chat, and I will try to include that and incorporate that into our conversation so we can make this as relevant as possible for all of you. So thank you again for joining, and Vishal, over to you.
Thank you, Paul, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vishal. I handle the cloud business for Wipro. Wipro is a large Indian global system integrator. And when I say I handle cloud, I kind of talk to all the CXOs in different industries, customers from US and Canada, on how they want to start their cloud journey and how they're going to actually implement that. I also have experience into WAN space, where I've worked in a startup called Oriaka, which is also into the WAN optimization space. So pretty familiar with Riverbed, Silver Peaks, all these companies. And happy to connect with all of you to learn, how are you guys looking at the changing dynamics in the market when it comes to blockchain, IoT, or cloud, and even multi-cloud or hybrid cloud within cloud space.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vishal. And Alex, over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. So again, my name is Alex Kulinchenko, for those who do not know me. I work for a gold mining company called Kinross Gold Corporations. We're a Canadian-based company with mine sites around the world. I've been with Kinross for over 10 years now, currently in the capacity of manager of global IT infrastructure. Networking is a big component of the infrastructure, is the backbone of our company's infrastructure. And we have a small team that handles the global WAN for Kinross. So we started with a need to look into different solutions for our network when an abundance of cloud-based applications came into play at various sites, and we found it challenging to prioritize the traffic for the business critical applications in the cloud when they're fighting over the recreational traffic of Netflix, WhatsApp, and whatnot. And we had other challenges which were on the financial front to really get away from MPLS, the traditional MPLS for our WAN connectivity, and utilize the Silver Peak appliances to make it more cost effective for the company. We had a blend of different technologies to complement our WAN. So we had Riverbed steelheads, for example, to optimize the WAN traffic. And this is where, when we were looking for a partner to work on SD-WAN implementation, Silver Peak stood out because the WAN optimization piece comes within the appliance as one of the features. So I'll be happy to talk in more details with some of you on the challenges we faced and how we were able to overcome those on any technical aspects of the SD-WAN implementation, because I used to be a network engineer in my previous life, so I can talk technical as well. And any other questions you may have for me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alex. And I know that came up in our breakout session. One of the guests was asking about how SD-WAN can enable their global operations. And I said I would come back to you later, given that you're supporting operations in areas as far-reaching as Siberia and different parts of South America and that. So I think that'd be very, very relevant. But I really kind of want to start this at, shall I say, a higher level, and then we can drill down into some specifics. So Vishal, why don't I start with you, and just maybe you can share with us how you're supporting companies to adopt data-heavy technologies, whether it's IoT, AI, blockchains, along those lines.
Yeah, actually, I would want to start with a recent report that Wipro published on state of the enterprise blockchain market, wherein we surveyed more than 100 C-level executives, and 95% of them were focused on areas of supply chain, areas such as payments, identity, trade, crypto, and finance. Most of the respondents believe that blockchain is a strategic priority for them, and only 1% felt that it is not relevant. Now, when it comes to blockchain, and most of the CXOs believing in the power of blockchain technology, it comes down to what impact it can bring, right? So the near-term business impact will be on the process excellence, efficiency, data and identity management, and better business outcomes, right? But also it is to drive the competitive differentiation in the market by reimagined IT infrastructure, additional trust in the multi-party collaboration, transparent and immutable transactions, right? Now, having said that, this entire blockchain technology's core is the network. And when it comes to network, customers, and let's say in case of supply chain, customers, vendors, and partners, all of them need to connect to the network. It could be through MPLS, it could be through VPN, it could be through the broadband, it could be through a data center connecting to a private link to a cloud, right? It could be different ways. And in such kind of complex situations, the SD-WAN solutions would play a critical role. And we've seen requirements on blockchain solutions where SD-WAN comes into play in many customer scenarios. So I would say, especially in blockchain, I'm seeing a very high uptake of a solution that would solve a challenge for multiple parties trying to connect, and all of that, how that pairing would happen. When it comes to IoT, we have customers in mining, manufacturing, where there are remote workers, right? And they need to be connected, and you need to capture the data, and it could be solutions that could be remote maintenance, monitoring and maintenance, right? It could be a tracking of the workers in hospitals or different other places. In all those situations, again, the network becomes a critical element, because again, there are places where there will be only 4G connectivity. It could be 3G connectivity, remote places. Those places, again, people trying to connect through via different mediums, it becomes a challenging aspect, and if something that we've seen customers bring up as a challenge, and again, where common problem stated is the application performance, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, I think that's a great kind of to build on that over to Alex, given that they do have locations around the world. I think we know everyone is struggling today just in general to keep up with the challenges on the network, but maybe Alex, you could speak to how SD-WAN and what Kinross Gold has been doing to enable that performance in remote locations where you might not have access to MPLS or large broadband connections.
Yes, Paul, very good question. So how we started with Silver Peak and SD-WAN in general is we had this business challenge in one of our remote mine sites in Africa, in Mauritania. It's part of the West African region. And in Mauritania, we had a number of internet links, but no MPLS, no ability to connect that site to the MPLS network to prioritize WAN traffic. So the topology was hub and spoke. So Mauritanian sites were connected to corporate via IPsec VPN, and then from there they were reaching other sites. The biggest challenge was traffic prioritization. You can't really do it with a traditional VPN tunnel between two firewalls. So you would need to utilize multiple links to send the traffic over the less congested route for unobstructed video and audio communication, for example, real media traffic, or business critical applications such as our ERP system access. That was a first challenge, to prioritize internal traffic. The second challenge was, as I mentioned earlier, the business critical apps in the cloud. We are not a huge cloud shop, to be honest. We're just tapping into that. However, we do have some critical applications for health and safety, for example, that reside as a service in the cloud. And how do we prioritize this over Netflixes and YouTubes, which are also essential for our sites. Believe it or not, entertainment traffic, recreational traffic, serves its purpose at middle of Sahara, for example, where people come in to work for a month at a time, and they do need to keep connection with their families and whatnot, and entertain themselves. So that comes as a lesser priority. So we cannot really turn off YouTube. We cannot really turn the taps off on those traffic, and we need to instead prioritize it. So what we've done with Silver Peak is we were able to utilize multiple internet links. We have 3 in Mauritania at that facility, at that site. And we've designed our policies in such a way that business critical applications over the WAN are going over the one of the links that is dynamically allocated to that traffic based on any session. So that's just completely dynamic. For the internet-based traffic, because we cannot really control egress traffic from the internet, we chose one particular link for the business cloud applications, where Office 365, health and safety applications, ServiceNow, and other critical apps are flowing through, and the other pipe sort of reserved for recreational traffic. That was a huge positive impact to the site and the business community. They did notice the difference right away, and that was the success that led us to select the SD-WAN as a standard for all of our sites going forward, and we've been rolling it out across our global operations since then. That happened last year. So business need that was satisfied with a new technology. It wasn't possible with the legacy applications or the legacy topology using just our traditional routers, and policy-based routing would not play a good role there. We needed something more robust and something more dynamic, policy-driven. So this is where the Silver Peak came in.
Interesting. I think, there's probably this spectrum where we see some companies are investing where they can in bigger links, larger MPLS, things like that, and trying to throw more bandwidth. You didn't have those options, so you had to throw multiple smaller circuits and then let the SD-WAN prioritize the traffic, give it that priority of what is business critical versus what's important to the people that are working at those sites 24/7 and in their downtime, so that it's still a positive experience. And I guess they want to come back after their leave. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, exactly. And the policies do make it a dynamic exercise. So Mauritania is, let's just say that the internet links in Mauritania are not as reliable as they are in North America. Okay.
Sure.
And they do come up and down. Just recently, there was a fiber break at a submarine fiber that connects the continent to Europe, we had suffered an issue with the primary link, and we had to effectively use the technology to just allow business critical applications through one remaining link. And again, because it was policy driven, we didn't have to do any customization. It was just if the primary big fiber link is down, we just cut the recreational internet and make it so that the business critical applications are still working for the site. So that was again one of the positive outcomes of using SilverPeak.
Wonderful. And I guess the other thing that kind of plays well is when Netflix allowed people to start downloading the content or certain content so they could use it offline, that would help. But, you know, you said you're not doing a lot with the cloud, Vishal. You know, in that survey you referenced, there was a lot around IoT, blockchain, AI. What about the cloud? What came out there, or what are you seeing with multi-cloud, hybrid cloud? And anything, one question that's come up in the chat is, in addition to the cloud, anything related to data management. So, you know, if you could address the cloud and anything towards data management for our group, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me start with the, you know, in an organization, right, you have your branches, you have your data center, and then you can now, because of SaaS solutions being available, such as, you know, Dropbox, Office 365, Salesforce, then you need to connect through your data center to SaaS solutions like those. And with the transformation coming up in the cloud space, you know, there is a few stats that I would like to share here. According to IDC, there will be $10.3 billion spent towards the public cloud services in Canada by 2023, which will grow from $5.8 billion in 2019, right? Also, the second fact that I would want to share is 91% of organizations of enterprises today use public cloud. 84% of them have a multi-cloud strategy, and 58% of them have a hybrid cloud technology. This is a report published by Google. Also, most of the organizations, when we have done our own surveys, it has come out that 9 out of 10 enterprises have today are operating either on hybrid or have a multi-cloud strategy in place, right? There is also another trend that I see, which is on their strategy within cloud, where they're choosing either, you know, containerization based strategy on Kubernetes or a strategy on serverless way of doing things, right? So those are some other trends that I see. But coming back, customers need to connect through their data center via, you know, it could be MPLS or VPN, through a private link to the cloud providers, whether it is AWS or Azure or Google Cloud or, you know, somebody else. And they have services such as Express Route or AWS Direct Connect, or Google as Interconnect or direct pairing options. Now, when you have so much of complexity involved in your network, where, you know, there is things connecting over internet, things connected through private links, things connected through broadband MPLS, typically what we have seen is, in such kind of situations, while everybody is embracing the benefits of cloud, there are certain challenges that creep up, right? And I'd like to highlight some of those challenges that our customers have also seen. The first one that is usually, you know, one of the questions that comes up in such things is, what about my applications, the latency that I would have when I go into there, right? Is the nearest point of presence from cloud even close to me, and is that link sufficient? If that link is there, is that very costly, right? You know, how do I optimize that, right? What about the security when it comes to so much of network being, you know, leveraged for different aspects, right? So those are few things that you know, that I've seen and observed have come up as certain challenges from customers, where I believe, you know, solutions such as SD-WAN could come into play and provide solution towards maybe security, maybe how all the network orchestration would happen, right? How the packets could be exchanged faster, better in an optimized way, how the application performance can be enhanced. And these are typical challenges that pretty much any organization, when they're embarking on cloud, they are facing. right? And when it comes to data, right, just to address that part of data management, data is quite a critical element because all these cloud providers are after data, right? Because as long as they have data, they will be the king in the market. Because as far as, let's say, Google's philosophies goes, right, they say data is the new oil, right?
Yeah.
Right. So given that, data, its security and data management both are critical aspects, because there are certain restrictions. For example, a large bank that we kind of help in cloud, they cannot move their data outside of Canada, right? So they need to keep that data within Canada. It cannot be leveraged by a cloud that they have paid for in the US, right? Or they have already started their journey on, right? Similarly, there are GDPR restrictions when it comes to the UK or Europe region, right? So those are certain aspects that you need to keep in mind. And the last part is files or data which are where the files are of large size. That also plays a critical element when it comes to network, because the larger the file, when it comes to very, very large video files, right,
Yes.
then it becomes a challenge, right? So I think those factors needs to be considered when you are embarking on cloud, both from network perspective as well as from your data and security perspectives. So those are few things that you should definitely consider.
Well, thank you for that. And it's been a constant theme already with you and Alex, the fact that SD-WAN allows companies to prioritize their applications and really prioritize that traffic that's relevant to running their business. Now, something that came up in our breakout session that I'd like you both to address where possible is really how are you managing through the crisis? And Alex, I'm going to ask you to speak to this first as someone that's implemented SD-WAN, and then Vishal, I'll ask you to address that as what you're seeing from your customers that have and have not implemented SD-WAN. But I think that would be relevant for everyone on this call today. So maybe Alex, to you first, how has Kinross Gold been surviving through this crisis that we're facing, and specifically as related to enabling people to work from home, work for sites, and work from their remote sites?
Right, Paul. So in our case, we leverage VPN technologies like Cisco's AnyConnect VPN to allow remote workforce to work from home using their company issued assets. So that's the restriction we have from the security team. And because of the COVID-19 crisis, we had found ourselves to rapidly expand our VPN gateways around the world. And we did so strategically at the locations where we already have implemented SD-WAN. So we have our South American operations in Brazil and Chile, for example, are already on what we call SD-WAN cloud. So we used to call it MPLS cloud, now it's SD-WAN cloud. And we were able to turn up the VPN gateway in Brazil. We were able to turn up another VPN gateway in Toronto. And as a result, we increased our capacity threefold within 1 or 2 days.
Wow.
So that led, coupled with that, we had to review our network utilizations across the board and see where we can increase the internet capacities. Having multiple links definitely helps to have redundancies and better capacity when you bundle the traffic over the WAN. But for the VPN gateways, we had to, in some cases, increase particular links that do correspond to the VPN gateway ingress point. That was our case. I know that Silverpeak has a solution with an extra small appliance that can be installed in a small remote office or home office. We do not have a use case for that in our company just because of the security implications that security policies, I would rather say, that require the ASA with IPS sit behind Silverpeak appliance to do full back-to-back deep packet inspection and intrusion prevention of the traffic that traverses the network. So that we only limit the remote workforce to AnyConnect VPN. And for those people who do not have a company-issued asset, we utilize Citrix. And again, Citrix is one of the remote tools that we use at some of the sites. Hope that answers the question.
No, that's very helpful. And Vishal, before I transition to you for your thoughts of what you see working and not working, just Alex, to understand, have you had any kind of major instances of downtime related to the network as we've had to adjust so quickly, or have you been able to take it in stride, shall we say?
We were able to weather the storm. We had no issues whatsoever.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. And I didn't know, for the record, I didn't know the answer to that question, so it's always dangerous to put out questions like that, but interesting to hear. And well, Vishal,
we had a very good response from the business community, from our most senior leadership team that essentially admitted that IT was very well prepared to handle a crisis. We had to close our Toronto office very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And we had to transition over 300 people to work from home almost in a single night. So yeah, that's good when technology works for us, and it's good when we have visibility within the leadership team to recognize the efforts and the planning we've made to make it happen.
Perfect. Thank you, Alex. And Vishal, I'm going to ask you to kind of give us your response for that, but I'm also just going to remind everyone on the call, I think we have about 15 minutes before we go back to the breakout. So if anyone has any burning questions that they would like answered that they think would be relevant for the group, if you could post that, I will look to answer those immediately after Vishal's answer. But over to you, Vishal.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Given the COVID-19 situation, both our organization as well as our customers both faced tremendous challenge, obviously, for the BCP, which is business continuity planning, and get things going, right? Of course, some customers did face challenges because one of the large manufacturing company, they were completely on traditional technologies, traditional network. They were not really geared for moving into such situation where everything goes remote, right? Now, given that situation, they're still in struggling situation. We're trying to figure out solutions with us, where of course we are bundling multiple things together, solutions such as, cloud virtual desktop or enterprise virtual desktop on cloud, where we leverage Citrix cloud on Azure, kind of things. And we also leverage Cisco in some places, right? So bundling all of that together, we're trying to address. I would not say that all of our customers are able to, are able to address all the challenges to move remotely and are able to solve all the challenges on network. There are certain customers still struggling. However, I would say 90% of them have easily transitioned, seamlessly onto the remote workers. And of course, then there were challenges coming in UK, because I read an article, Azure is facing a bandwidth capacity that they've reached the full capacity in UK, right? There's an article that came up today, right? So what happens in such a situation where, a cloud provider has reached a capacity? Now, how do you handle traffic and, your remote workers? How do they continue working? Those are certain aspects that I'm observing. So it's changing dynamics. I don't think there is one answer. Yes, there are customers struggling. Yes, they have some customers which are advanced and have figured out solutions when they've engaged people like us who've come up with certain solutions, including packaging the SD-WAN solutions. And there are certain situations which are out of control, which is like if the cloud reaches capacity, then even we struggle, right? So how about those situations? Yeah.
Very interesting. So I see Raj, I think, has been waiting to ask a question. And again, I want to make this really useful as much as I can to everyone on this call. So Raj, I see you've gone off mute. Over to you, sir, for a question for the panel.
Thank you so much, Paul. Appreciate Alex. Fantastic what you're doing. So congratulations to you. My question to you is that our environment, like yours, is very similar. So we have 150 offices across Canada. And I'll give you an example of a place called Voice of in Manitoba. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that place, but it exists on the map. And getting a connection over there, you'll be lucky if you can get DSL. Bell provided, it is MTS actually. And ordering connections over there is a nightmare. It takes 6 months to get a connection ready. But I'm just giving you a perspective. I'm sure you also face situations like that. You used words like riverbed and all of that. So we use the same technology over here too. I'm just interested to know if you're using Steel Fusion in any shape or form for those offices that are really, really, really remote. I'm talking about like Siberia or Mauritiana and all of the other places.
Okay, so before we go into the second one, let me answer this. We do have riverbed and riverbed steelheads for WAN optimization, and it worked wonders in our most remote locations like Far East Russia that are only connected to our network through satellite. So it's VSAT with a very limited bandwidth. Just to put things in perspective, guys on the call, your home connection is probably 10 times faster than a 10 meg downlink in Arctic Circle that we have for 450 users that are permanently there. Okay, so 10 megs for 450, maybe 3 megs for a small workforce of 100 people in our site. Just put things in perspective. With Silver Peak, first of all, we haven't gone to Russia with the Silver Peak WAN appliances as of yet. That is a plan. So we're gonna be putting them on what we call SD-WAN cloud. And although there is no redundancies on the internet circuits because they actually don't have any, they use a single satellite connection with a single point of failure to touch down to a site that has a fiber internet. We still gonna put the SD-WAN appliances to do the WAN optimization piece specifically to that, as well as to more dynamically manage the WAN traffic. So prioritize the WAN traffic between Silver Peak and the different ends of the satellite communication. All right. When it comes to remote locations in Manitoba you mentioned, and I'm quite confident that Silver Peak devices would be able to do the trick for you with a WAN optimization piece, especially for the SIFS traffic, for like SMB traffic, for file sharing and whatnot. No different than Silver Peak, so no different than riverbed steelheads. You do want to start looking for 2 or more circuits for every single site to leverage the technology better, and especially when it comes to cloud-based technologies, since that will allow you to have a separate path for the critical applications versus not so critical or recreational. So that's what we do pretty much everywhere. Two circuits is a minimum, is a new norm for even the smallest of our offices around the world.
And a quick follow-up question on that: do you have local resources like a file server in that particular location where you have 100 people in Russia or anywhere else? Just using Russia remote location as an example. It doesn't have to be Russia; it can be anywhere else. Do you have any file? Because at the end of the day, those 100 people locally, they need to do their work when
Right.
they are maybe checking in their time or submitting requests and things like that. Like, are you using a combination of Citrix on that along with centralized data somewhere, or are you using local resources over there?
It's a good question, Raj. So yes, we do have local resources at all of our mine sites. So we actually have both production and disaster recovery facilities typically to for the sites to be fully self-sufficient in case of the major network outages, especially in Russia. Again, there's a single point of failure with satellite communication. Something happens to the dish or the modem or the satellite itself up in the sky, so they're in for a long time to repair it, and they need to sustain operation. They need to conduct business as usual within their site as much as possible. So they are file servers and whatnot. When it comes to ERP system, for example, our only presence is in Toronto, so they do have to communicate to Toronto through the WAN to reach the ERP system, which is critical for our gold mining operations. Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
So you're using a combination of both local resources along with technologies like Citrix. I'm not saying Citrix is the answer, but very similar, right? Are you also in Azure for any, just curious, or AWS?
We do not, we haven't adopted infrastructure as a service as of yet. This is still on the roadmap.
Okay.
It is pretty much on-prem stuff for them.
Cool. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. And again, I'll encourage people, we have about probably 5-6 minutes before we go back to some of the breakout sessions. So if there's any questions that we can take and answer for the group, happy to do that now. I think another use case I think that was interesting, because what Alex said, and I would like to kind of bring to everyone's attention, is that ability to have multiple circuits, and that way letting the SD-WAN technology identify which of the circuits are performing best at that moment and move the traffic across the appropriate one. We have a use case where one of our customers provides medicine out in rural locations, and they literally have doctors with backpacks with 2 cell phones, one with each with a different provider, and a mini Silver Peak in their backpack, so that they can communicate, get the right information, and that in real time. So it's very dynamic that way. So I don't see any questions yet. Maybe I think a good question to start closing this down before we break out is, Vishal, I'll start with you and then over to Alex. Really, one thing that you have experienced with SD-WAN that you think the group should know, be it positive or negative. So a positive surprise or something that was a surprise for you. I think in the past, people have questioned, is SD-WAN ready for prime time? I personally believe that's behind us now with the tens of thousands of customers that are out there using SD-WAN, but really an open-ended question for you to share something that you think that everyone in attendance would find useful as related to SD-WAN to enable their networks.
Yeah, I think what I would like to point out is the positive aspect of SD-WAN coming into play because of the trends coming in picture of cloud, IoT, blockchain, and all advanced technologies. SD-WAN is becoming more and more important. It is getting packaged as a requirement into a lot of RFPs that we receive from customers globally, which obviously re-emphasizes the necessity of such solution, right? Whether it is around the network, or it is on the performance, or it is the cost, or it is the security, right? All of those aspects are quite important. I think the example that Alex gave was very good, of how it could be leveraged, and pretty much similar scenarios is what we have observed into our customer base as well. So I would also personally like to learn more about the use cases that I saw on your website, because some of those are questions that are getting asked into our customer base as well. And given the COVID-19 situation, I think need of such solution becomes more and more relevant.
Perfect. And maybe, Alex, I'll ask you that same question, or another question, let you choose whichever one you think is relevant, is there's also a lot of confusion in the SD-WAN market. There's been a growth from about 20 vendors to 65 vendors. So either speaking to kind of a surprise, positive or negative with SD-WAN, or maybe, Alex, speaking to the selection process. How did you kind of cut through some of the noise and make the decision to go with Silver Peak?
Okay, so I can answer actually both very quickly.
Okay.
To the first one, I already shared some insight of leverage 2 or more links for your SD-WAN implementations, no matter how small the site is. Even for Raj's question in Manitoba, for the use case in Manitoba, see if LTE can be as a secondary circuit, so to speak, to leverage. We don't have a huge experience with LTE. We just have one site with a single circuit, that traditional circuit, and we install a secondary circuit through LTE modem. So I do recommend doing that, and that requires, in order to leverage multiple circuits, that requires to put serial peak edge connect appliances at the edge, and this is very important to note, because and this is a recommended approach by serial peak or any other vendor that you talk to, they would recommend putting the devices at the edge. It might be not quite compatible from your security CISO point of view, that having a device exposed to the internet is against their logic. However, if you go through the white papers that Silverpeak published, and if you put another technology behind Silverpeak to monitor the traffic, like we did with this ASA, Cisco ASAs behind the Silverpeak appliances to do the IPS and DPI, DPAC inspection of the traffic, you should be well covered. Okay, so those are my 2 recommendations. When it comes to our selection process, we approached a few big names. No secret there. We were a Cisco customer to the bone. So we obviously reached out to Cisco about their SD-WAN offering. They had Vyopta, I think, that was still at the time was still, I would say,
I think we
lost
might.
Alex.
Yeah, I think the same thing. And I will point out, he said that they were not providing Silver Peaks at home when I make that comment. So if we get Alex back, great. We will let him answer that question. I think people might have benefited from that, but I think I've got about 1 minute here. So first, everyone, thank you for joining. I hope you can stay for the breakouts and we can take this in any number of directions. I do want to thank Alex, thank Vishal, and kind of closing comments for me and what Silver Peak can offer to everyone that took the time to join this call. I actually think this forum worked well. I enjoyed seeing kind of people on the cameras and seeing kind of who's paying attention and that. So I found it actually very useful. But what I'd like to say is we can offer to come in and help you understand the business value of investing in SD-WAN, and also where Silver Peak can be that enabler. So whether it's circuit savings, as you heard about, whether it's hardware consolidation, eliminating firewalls, eliminating WAN-off devices, as we heard about, potentially Riverbed and others, potentially eliminating routers, etc., whether it's improving your employee productivity through application performance, through reducing downtime, whether it's making better use of the cloud, really understanding, or frankly, whether it's freeing up your IT networking engineers from a certain amount of firefighting to focus on rolling out new applications, dealing with global pandemics and whatever might come their way. We're absolutely happy to work with you. We have on our website an ROI calculator, but we can take the calls. I happen to be local here in Toronto and would be happy to have a call with anyone to discuss further the value of SD-WAN and specifically what Silver Peak enables. So I think that brings me to the top of the time. I see Steve here. So over to you, Steve, to help transform us now. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, Vishal, Alex, great job. We look forward to continuing these conversations in smaller groups, so please bear with us as we transition. If we don't speak again, best wishes for health for everyone in your families getting through these difficult times, and we do look forward to having a face-to-face lunch with you at Lena Restaurant sometime in the future.